We're 48 hours away from tip-off of a new UConn women's basketball season, but we're never too far to talk about what stands in their way. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I want to take a moment to share some quick news. Thanks to fantastic guests like Emily Adams of the Hartford Courant, Dan Meehan, my co-host on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the men, owner of Exit 68. Go check it out. And also some great interviews with the likes of Eric Ryba and soon to be Braylon Mullins coming up this Friday. October has been a huge month for us at Locked On UConn. Our community is growing really fast, and it's all thanks to listeners like you. Special shout out to my everydayers who wake up or turn on their podcast, YouTube, and listen to us on a daily basis. And finally, something that we're really excited about, 10% of our revenue goes to Bleeding Blue for Good. So supporting us automatically helps you support UConn NIL efforts. And another 10% goes to the Husky Ticket Project. That means every follow, download, and subscription helps support UConn athletes and sends kids to underserved communities to experience the excitement of UConn basketball and football. So if you're enjoying the content, please take a second to subscribe and follow wherever you listen to your audio. Together, we're building something special and helping make a real difference for Husky fans everywhere. Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first bet, $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, welcome back to the season and how we're going to talk through a bunch of interesting matchups this year and diving into some early games that set the stage for what's to come. Kicking things off with BU 2 days from now, November 7th. This game is about as low pressure as you can get to start a season. The Terriers, one of the two Patriot League teams, is on UConn's schedule, are projected to finish fifth in their conference, but did receive 2 first-place votes, so there should be some talent to look out for. They don't pose a serious threat, which is exactly the point, and exactly the point for these games. For UConn, it's about getting into game day rhythm, shaking off those early season nerves, getting past that exhibition, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show, and giving some of our players a chance to really make some mistakes and grow in a real game environment. Also, get into some game shape. You know, I think one of the things that we'll talk about with Geno Elfie is how is she in game shape? Probably not. I mean, maybe she is from a cardio perspective, but playing basketball is different than working yourself out. And so it's going to take her 4, 5, 6 games to really get going. And I think after Boston University, UConn will face off against UCF on November 10th. This one was has a bit more significance as it marks a reunion with a former AAC rival. USF, otherwise University of South Florida, might not be a powerhouse that it was in that conference, but they're preseason favorite in the American Conference. And Romy Levi, who led them with 14.7 points per game last season, was named preseason conference player of the year. She's back. USF went 19-14 last season and missed the NCAA tournament, but they're a solid opponent, a little bit step up from Boston University. This game is a chance for UConn to face a little bit more competition early on, testing their defensive schemes against a talented scorer in Levi. Then we head to my adopted hometown. You guys come to me, Greensboro, on November 15th for the highly anticipated matchup against North Carolina at the Greensboro Coliseum, although it's called First Horizon Coliseum now. That's going to take a little bit to get used to. Carolina comes into the season with a lot to prove. Last year, they were a bit of an underdog, facing an early exit in the NCAA tournament after meeting powerhouse South Carolina. Injuries plagued their season. Does that sound familiar? And they had key players out of position, which limited their potential. So this year, they're looking for redemption. They've had to deal with some major changes. Deja Kelly, the point guard who's been the face of the program for the past 4 years, transferred to Oregon, leaving behind a big gap in leadership and on-court production. So it's going to be a really interesting game ahead. So despite this, Carolina isn't backing down. They've reloaded. They're ranked 15th in the preseason AP poll, which speaks to their talent and trust in head coach Courtney Banghart. Alyssa Utsby, the do-it-all forward, returns as their mainstay alongside Lexi Donarski and Maria Gokdeng. Etzby is coming off a season where she averaged close to a double-double and even recorded a triple-double against Syracuse. She's evolving her offensive game, planning to play more on the perimeter this year, which will be a big test for our defenders. Donarski brings a reliable 3-and-D presence, while Gakdang offers size and rebounding power in the paint. This game against UNC will be UConn's first real test, not just in terms of skill, but in handling the pressure of an away game. Even though it's kind of a neutral site, you're in Carolina's backyard. They're an hour away from campus, and it's against a top-ranked opponent. It's a chance for UConn to make a statement early on, proving that they're ready to take on the top competition right from the start. After that game, we're back at Campbell Pavilion on November 20th for a matchup against FDU, which happens to be a special night for UConn. This is the 40th anniversary celebration for Geno Auriemma and Chris Daly. 4 decades of absolute excellence that have defined this program. Kudos to both of them. Assuming no hiccups in Greensboro, this game could also mark a historic moment when Auriemma takes on the all-time college basketball wins record. There's a lot of significance surrounding this game, not just for the players on the court, but for everyone who's ever been a part of UConn's journey, from everybody that's ever worn the jersey to worked for Geno and Chris, to anybody that's ever gone to a game, ever watched a game, that is kind of been in awe of their phenomenal success and the expectations they brought to this program. FDU comes in as a preseason favorite in the NEC, so they'll bring some competition. It's not going to be anything to worry about, but low to mid-major teams will come in with a point to prove that they're not just there to be a doormat, even though that's typically what they will be. But all eyes will be on Geno and Chris as we celebrate their legacy and potentially witness a record-breaking moment. So I think that's also really interesting. I wonder about the UNC game here in Greensboro as kind of a, not like a letdown game, but as a game where they're so looking forward to potentially doing that on the anniversary celebration to break the all-time wins record for Geno, that it could be a tougher game than people expect. Because even though Carolina's ranked 15th, I don't expect UConn to lose that game, but it's possible, right? When we return, we're going to talk about the marquee matchups of this year, and how each of those teams have different players and strategies that are going to give UConn some trouble. Coming up after this. What's up, UConn fans? It's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to specific players you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm supporting Mel Brown. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Mel was phenomenal last week against Georgia State. 14 carries, 138 yards rushing with a touchdown. So let's show Mel the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Please don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscription and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X on Roy, @Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. Hey, NFL fans, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Join us at FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of NFL. All right, you're back on Locked On UConn. your host here, Mark Zanetto. Let's get the tagline back up here so you guys can follow me on X at Mark Zanetto CBB. Although Major League Baseball, I believe, is a special a FanDuel official sports betting partner, but we are giving away bonus bets for NFL people this week. So anyway, back to the games, back to the marquee matchups that matter for UConn as we battle against top teams this year. UConn will be up against the best of the best this year. We talked about it with Emily Adams. The first one that comes to mind is the very first road game, which is outside of coming to Greensboro, the true road game on someone's campus. Notre Dame will face them on December 5th. Notre Dame is ranked number 5 in the preseason polls and 6 by the AP preseason coaches poll and 6 by the AP. So this game is as big as it gets in terms of early season showdowns. A former Big East foe, Notre Dame's team this year is stacked as one of the most anticipated rosters that they've had since their 18-19 championship season. They're led by 2 All-American point guards, Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles. This duo brings a unique dynamic to the court, creating up-tempo opportunities and tricky half-court sets that will challenge the UConn defense. It's rare to see a team with 2 elite point guards, and Notre Dame has already shown they can create seamless chemistry, and returning stars like Sonia Citron and the wing Maddie Westbeld at forward. And you've got a team that's explosive, versatile, and ready to make a deep postseason run. And beyond the returning core, Notre Dame has bolstered its lineup with grad transfers like Liza Carlin and Marquette Liatu King. Probably saying her name wrong, so I apologize. From Pittsburgh, 2 players who bring experience and rebounding power to the front court. And let's not overlook their highly touted freshman, Kate Koval, a 5-star center from the Ukraine who has drawn comparisons to some of the best European players out there. Koval's ability to score and defend would be a big factor, especially as UConn looks to control the paint with Geno Elfie and Ice Brady. This game is a heavyweight matchup and will give UConn a real sense of where they stand against one of the nation's best. And I think it'll give the bigs on our team a really good opportunity to see where they stack up currently in the landscape of women's college basketball. So following that showdown, we have potential matchup with Ole Miss during the Bahamas tournament. I don't think Oregon State's going to pose that much of a threat, but who knows? It's a kind of a tournament setting. It's in the Bahamas. Ole Miss is coming off a season with a lot of promise, and they have high expectations again this year, especially after a close game against Juju Watkins and USC. They lost by 2 points early in the season, yesterday actually. And so if they're competitive with Juju and USC, this Ole Miss team is not going to be one that you're going to want to overlook, especially if we're playing them for a Bahamas title there. If the tournament matchups align, this could be the big test for UConn, especially as Ole Miss is known for their physical and fast play style. That one I'm actually really looking forward to. I think once they get past Oregon State, I think Ole Miss does beat Boston College. I didn't do as much of a deep dive on Boston College, but I think Ole Miss will handle some business there. And then you turn to December 17th, UConn will face Iowa State at Mohegan Sun. The Cyclones come into the season ranked 8th in the AP poll, riding high off a successful season where they reached the Big 12 title game. This could end up being a conference matchup. Who knows? Someday, Iowa State is one of the most disciplined, efficient offenses in the country, and they've added even more depth to their roster through the transfer portal, enhancing their three-point shooting, which is already one of their strengths. So top scorers like Audie Crooks, Addie Brown, and Emily Ryan return, providing experience and skill across the board. UConn will have to be sharp in transition and guard the perimeter aggressively to keep Iowa State from getting hot behind the arc. So that'll be an interesting one to see how we handle kind of the inside-outside game of Iowa State. Again, another top 10 opponent. Audie Crooks is a really interesting player. She's going to give our bigs fits. But if three-point shooting has improved and they're even more efficient than they were last year, this team is going to be a fantastic team that we're going to have to really play our best. It is home, Mohegan Sun, home adjacent. So we'll have the crowd behind us. So that'll be a tough game for Iowa State as well. Look forward to it right around Christmas. I think it's a Tuesday. Then we kind of fast forward through some stuff because we're talking about just the marquee matchups. And there's not a ton in the Big East, guys. I mean, Creighton, you could call a marquee matchup, but that's about it. And so if we're going to, there's 2 more games on the calendar that I'm really interested in. And one is, of course, with the Lady Vols in Knoxville. That's in February, I believe. Not the 17th. The 17th is South Carolina. I think it's the 5th. So they have a new head coach in Kim Caldwell, and they are literally trying to break the mold from an offensive perspective. They're trying to try a new high-octane offense according to all the reports that I've read, Caldwell has openly stated her goal of averaging 90 points per game, which is crazy. Crazy good. Maybe not crazy as she's insane, but who knows? We'll find out. And she's got the roster to back it up. Ruby Whitehorn, one of Tennessee's top scorers, had a phenomenal debut with 29 points. She's set to lead the charge for the Lady Vols. It's Tennessee's depth that I'm concerned about, more so for them, not for us, because I think UConn can handle them from that perspective. Their three-point shooting will really test UConn's perimeter defense and probably the stamina, because they're up and down. And this is one of those games where even though the Tennessee's not the Tennessee of old, it's an old foe. It's kind of like, on the men's side, Georgetown was always a big-time foe, and now they've kind of taken a back seat to the UConn men. And frankly, whenever we play them, I don't feel any differently that I want to kick their ass. And I don't think there's any love lost from UConn fans and Tennessee fans from the women's perspective. And I think this is going to be an interesting game because, again, it's in Knoxville too. It's at Thompson Bowling Arena, high energy arena. It's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be a sold out, crazy affair, especially as by the end of that year, if Tennessee is really kind of evolved as a top SEC contender. And then, of course, we can't overlook the biggest showdown of the season on February 16th in Columbia when UConn takes on South Carolina at home. The Gamecocks, led by Dawn Staley, are the reigning champs and currently ranked number 1 in the country. They've lost some key players like Camila Cardosa, but Staley's squad is still stacked with talent. What's interesting, though, is they've lost some. They have players like Chloe Kitts and Joyce Edwards to bring a mix of size and athleticism and scoring power. I will say this, and I'm not trying to stir a hornet's nest. They didn't look as dominant against a Michigan team that isn't very good. They played their season opener. I know, I get it. It's a season opener, but it's not like they played. I guess the thing I would say is they played a high major team, a Big 10 school, who kind of exposed some areas they'll need to tighten up, particularly in rebounding and three-point shooting. But if UConn can go into this game and have a mixture of efficient offense, limit turnovers, and really kind of attack them internally, because they do not have that 6'7" presence that they've had in the past. I think this UConn team has a good chance to beat up South Carolina, who's known for their physicality and their depth, and playing them in Columbia will be an all-out battle. I think I don't know if UConn's going to win that game. I personally don't care. I just want them to go toe-to-toe and really kind of show us what they're made of, because that will tell you all that you need to know about this UConn team going into the tournament. But anyway, let's move on a little bit. I want to revisit the impact that Paige had in that exhibition, as well as some other folks that really kind of left their mark on that game, and some of the comments that Geno had about that before we end the program. We'll be back after this. What's up, my friends and college basketball fans everywhere? Let me tell you about a game changer, Zbiotics. Now, I'll be honest, I was a bit skeptical at first, but recently, after a night out with friends, I decided to give Zbiotics a pre-alcohol probiotic drink a try. It's this incredible drink invented by PhD scientists to help you feel better the morning after. And here's the deal. When you drink it, alcohol turns into this toxic byproduct in your gut. And that's what really causes those rough mornings, hangovers, not just dehydration. So Zbiotics tackles that head on with an enzyme to break it down before it even hits you. I made it my first drink of the night. I think it was about 10 days out. And the next morning, no fog, no sluggishness. I was sharp and ready for the day. So if you're ready to try it, go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. They even have a 100% money back guarantee, so you've got nothing to lose. Give it a shot. Thank me later. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn. Last segment of the program. Let's talk about the undeniable difference maker that UConn has this season, and it's Paige Bueckers. I'm going to talk about her on every single show. Having her back healthy, having had a whole offseason of putting in that work and not worrying about rehab. With her on the floor, we're just all looking at making a postseason run, and we're looking at a team with the potential to absolutely raise that 12th banner. Her skill, leadership, ability to take over a game at any time, it elevates UConn's ceiling and sets them apart in a crowded field of competitors. Not to mention, she has that running mate that's kind of just waiting in the wings to kind of get herself back into the mix. But before we even talk about AZ, because she's not available, in a recent exhibition against Fort Hays State, we saw a new commanding version of Paige. She opened the game letting her teammates take the first few shots, but feeling out the game, kind of like a fighter, throwing a few jabs. But around the 7:30 mark in the first quarter, she flipped the switch and took over. She started with that mid-range jumper, followed it up with another drive to the rim, layup, drained a step-back three. Within the first quarter alone, Paige had put up 9 points on 4 of 4 shooting. Kind of set the tone for the entire game of what was to come. So by halftime, she had 19 points, single-handedly outscoring Fort Hays State 19-17. That efficiency is kind of insane. She was 8 of 8 at halftime. She finished the game total of 14 with 0 turnovers, 27 points in 27 minutes. It wasn't just a strong performance, and I think we've talked about this time and time again. It was like crazy good about how it was just a reminder of how good Paige can be when she is assertive and when she doesn't defer. Geno highlighted this post game and said, "This is the kind of Paige we want to see," and he's right. This version of Bueckers is kind of like if anybody watched that show, The Boys. Kind of like a super version of her, where she takes a little drink, or like if you're an old school guy like me, you remember Popeye, you take your spinach, and all of a sudden you got big muscles, and you're ready to go. The thing is, Paige can do this at any point. She doesn't need to take a performance enhancer or Popeye spinach. She can turn it on at any moment. She makes a crazy impact beyond the scoring aspect of this. She brings a level of composure and floor stabilization that is very rare from players as versatile as her. You see it from point guards, you see it from bigs, but someone that can do both, it just shows how clear of an advantage UConn has when she's playing at that level. And I think we showed a natural inclination for people to defer to her, which is great. Like, having strong debuts from Kaitlyn, Chen, and from Sarah Strong is great. And we're going to talk about Sarah here in a second. But beyond Paige, Paige has to touch the ball on every possession. She should be making the decision on whether or not she's initiating offense or if she's going to defer to somebody else. And I think that's the chemistry that they're building. And I think that's something that showed up in this game as well. Sarah was great, as I mentioned. I think the only negative in her game was we talked about her willingness to take threes and not feel like she should back down to anybody. She was 1 for 6 from 3. She's a very capable shooter. I think she might have been 2 for 6. I think they kind of messed her flipping on the line. I literally went back and watched the game again. She made basically a top of the key, 2 of them, 3-pointer or wing, where I felt like her foot wasn't on the line. That could have been 2 for 6 or maybe 2 for 7 if you give it to her. But all around, she left no doubt that she's going to be here for the long haul. Ice is another one. I know, people give me a bunch of crap about how they don't think that she's, as good as I'm saying, but I think she's going to be a fantastic contributor to this team. She was 5 of 8 from the floor. She had 12 points. I think she only played about 22 minutes. I mean, her and Sarah together have an absolute undeniable chemistry in the high-low game, both of which, when they're playing the post, need to keep the ball up high. That's Jana Alfie's issue as well. And then, of course, there's Ashlyn. I mean, Ashlyn she really impressed me. I think, active in the passing lanes, 4 steals, creating off the dribble, creating off transition. She's not just a standstill shooter. Was 6 of 11, so over 50%. Fantastic. Kaitlyn Chen, same thing. Everyone was like 6 for 11. It's kind of wild. 14 points for her. Team high 5 assists. I think that number is going to continue to go up as she kind of makes a smooth integration to the team. She had some issues, with some entry passes. We talked about that already. But all in all, it was a good experience. I think Fort Hays also mentioned that they had, it was a kind of memorable experience for them. I would imagine anytime you're playing an exhibition against a D2 school or another school that hasn't played at UConn or is kind of, this is almost like the mecca of college basketball for smaller schools like this to come in, play in Gamble Pavilion, see the firsthand energy and history of UConn, play in front of a raucous crowd. And really kind of the importance of these exhibition games is creating, those good outcomes for both. So for the Huskies, this game was an ideal warm-up. It offered a chance to shake off early jitters, get some new players some minutes, refine the rotation to a certain extent. Paige leading the way, showing what she can do from an assertive standpoint. It's clear UConn is set on a path that could be a championship-level team. I don't think they're there yet, but I think they're damn close. They have too many weapons. I as long as they're healthy, they have just as good a shot as anybody of taking down South Carolina this year if South Carolina is there, because USC is damn good, Iowa State and others. So it's just going to be a fun ride. So enjoy it. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked on, stay connected, and to remember, it's not just about getting it done. It's about doing it in a way that it can't be done any better. That's our goal every day. Go Huskies. Go Geno Auriemma. Thank you for letting me co-opt that quote. Have a good day, y'all.